The story begins in the interior of the United States, where several people are drinking in a bar. The young man who just arrived is Bozo, and his younger brother is nicknamed Hot Wheels because he is in a wheelchair. Among the other customers are Harley, a chain smoker, the clever coach, an actor named Jason, and an elderly woman known simply as Grandma. The young man who makes deliveries for the bar is the beer guy, who swears he used to model. Hearing this, Coach sits beside him and claims he often manages many celebrities, but the bartender Joe cuts off the conversation and tells beer guy to move the truck out of the parking lot because the bar is crowded. Then, he goes to attend to another customer, a war veteran who is eager to return to the battlefield. Beer guy sneaks off to smoke in the back of the bar and runs into the owner of the establishment, whom everyone calls Bossman. He also tells the deliverer to move the truck, but takes the opportunity to request a drink, and beer guy can't refuse. Now Coach is eyeing Honey, a waitress who dreams of leaving there to become an actress. Much less cheerful than she is her colleague Tuffy, a bitter single mother who keeps her son, Cody, upstairs. When Honey's shift ends, Coach manages to convince her to leave with him, but the flirting is ruined when it's time to pay the bill. As he opens his wallet, his wedding ring falls onto the counter right in front of her, causing her to be indignant. Then we find out that Tuffy is bitter because she has to provide other types of services for the boss. Meanwhile, Bozo is looking for someone to play pool with and gets irritated with the lack of candidates, complaining loudly and bothering everyone. Joe tells him to shut up, and the two start bickering until something bizarre happens. An armed man who appears to be injured bursts into the bar yelling that everyone must obey if they want to stay alive. Joe immediately grabs his own gun from under the counter and points it at the intruder, who introduces himself as Eric. Realizing that brute force isn't going to work, Eric displays a gooey head and explains that there are 4 more creatures of that kind. He doesn't know where they came from, but he guarantees that they are fierce and hungry and that they are already on their way there at that moment. Everyone listens to what he says in great shock, and Beer Guy complies when he orders him to call the police, or preferably, the army. According to him, the only way to escape death is to seal all the doors and windows while they wait for someone with much heavier firepower to arrive. Joe still seems a bit suspicious since the guy is a stranger, but Eric retorts that only he can save everyone. He barely finishes saying this when a monster crashes through the window from the outside and grabs him. Everyone is in shock as they see him struggle while the creature tears off his head, spraying liters of blood all over Honey. In the confusion, Joe's gun goes off, and the shot goes through the ceiling, hitting Bossman's foot. When the monster finishes its job and Eric's body collapses in the middle of the room, now headless, his gun slides over to the other door of the bar, through which an equally out-of-breath woman enters. Her name is Jane, and she wants to know where her husband, Eric, is. A series of horrific growls starts coming from the other side of that door, and Jane hurriedly tries to close it, securing it with her rifle. Upstairs, Tuffy has already figured out that something horrible is happening in the bar, so she hides Cody inside a closet, telling the boy not to come out for any reason. Jane recognizes what's left of her husband, but morning will have to wait, as one of the monsters is already roaring outside, and it's time to seal the window. The ex-soldier offers to help the woman, but within moments, he is impaled by the monster's claw. One of the creatures, which is a bit smaller and seems to be a baby, sneaks through the remaining opening and manages to enter, spreading chaos. Harley pulls out her gun and tries to hit the little monster, but it's too quick. The shot hits the phone before Beer Guy can call for help, and the baby monster attacks Harvey, cutting off part of her leg. No one lifts a finger to help her, and she has to improvise a tourniquet with her own bandana. The next victim is Jason's friend, whose face is suddenly scalped, and who also ends up getting shot by Joe by accident. Grandma, who has not put down her drink until now, only seems slightly disgusted when the creature mistakes a hanging cow head on the wall for a female of its kind and begins rubbing against it. Joe seizes the chance and misses his shot again, but at least dislodges the wall decoration, causing the little monster to fall directly into the freezer. Bozo runs to lock it inside and announces that now everyone is safe, retracting what he said as soon as he hears the roars outside. Now, no one doubts the threat anymore, and everyone helps quickly seal everything up, having to fight off several paws trying to break in. To Jane's horror, one of the monsters steals Eric's body, and she can only keep the wedding ring. After the bar is finally sealed, Boss Man limps down, furious for having been shot, still unaware of everything that had happened. Tuffy is horrified when Joe shows the two of them the monster's head that Eric brought. Jane has no more information than what he has already given, and even says she barely knows how she got there. Upon hearing about the destruction that these beings have caused, Tuffy runs upstairs to fetch Cody and panics when she sees the empty closet, but soon finds him hiding behind an armchair. Jane arrives right behind her, yelling that they need to seal the windows there too, while Tuffy embraces her son and swears she will never let anything bad happen to him. It is at that very moment that the monster breaks the glass and attacks Cody, devouring the boy right there. Tuffy is devastated and screams non-stop while Joe tries to aim at the creature. Beer Guy also comes running and is the one who takes the slimy spray that the monster suddenly spits out. After holding Tuffy back so that she doesn't go after the monster that ate her son, Jane locks that room and everyone goes down to the bar, thinking of a way out. Beer Guy tries to wash off the slime but gets covered and says he needs to go to the hospital now. Jane doesn't let him open the door because that would put everyone at risk. She reveals that her daughter is outside and she has reasons to go out too, but knows that no one there can stand up to the hungry beasts. As Beer Guy leaves mumbling, Honey also tries to clean herself despite the inconvenient audience. Bossman says it would be better to get the bodies out of there too, and when Bozo approaches one of them, he gets a big scare from a sudden twitch of the corpse. The group decides to take the victims to the basement and finish sealing all possible entrances to the bar. Honey takes the gun from Harley, who has succumbed to blood loss from her leg. When they finish organizing everything and it seems there will finally be a moment of peace, the freezer starts shaking, and the little monster starts growling from inside again. Jane asks everyone to stay calm, but says that it's necessary to eliminate that thing as soon as possible. Excited about the chance to use his gun, Bossman fires multiple times through the side of the freezer. In silence, everyone listens in great suspense as the squeals of the baby start to fade. Bossman barely starts counting his victory when a claw comes out through the damaged freezer, grabbing his leg. Who comes to save him is Tuffy, who hits the disgusting paw with the barrel of the gun and then shoots inside until a spurt of black liquid confirms the kill. Despite the victory, the difficulty of defeating a mere baby causes general despondency, as it becomes evident that it is impossible to defeat the adult monsters. Coach sees this as his chance to shine and explains that, in a confrontation, appearances are the most important, and so all they need to do is convince the monsters that they are even more dangerous. With that goal, he tells Joe to open the freezer and pokes the remains of the baby with a long pipe. Jane agrees to open just a portion of the window so that he can hang it outside, showing what the terrible humans of that bar are capable of. It doesn't take long for the smell to attract the beasts, and for a moment, everyone fears that the plan will backfire and they will want revenge for the baby. However, what really happens is even more shocking, as the female monster swallows the baby whole and the couple immediately begins to mate. To everyone's despair, this results in an ultra-fast gestation, and in a few minutes, the female starts giving birth to several even more violent babies than the first. After quickly sealing the crack, everyone curses Coach's idiotic idea, and Bossman asks Jane how she encountered these beings. She explains that she left her daughter Charlie at her mother's house to hang out with Eric, and shortly after, their car hit one of the beasts. They found the head on the road, and the rest of the pack showed up soon after, chasing the couple ever since. Hearing this account, Bossman concludes that this is all retaliation for the hit and run, and blames Jane for bringing these pests to his bar. He points the gun at her and says he's considering giving the monsters what they want since that would save the others. Jane also cocks her gun, and reminds him that no one there will be saved after hanging the baby's body out the window. It is then that Beer Guy starts to get agitated again, showing the tufts of hair that are falling out and the horrendous lump that is moving under the skin of his arm. In a state of hysteria, he begins to speak non-stop, saying that everything is going to be okay because the experts must be on the way. Absorbed in his own fantasy, he thinks he hears the tanks rolling in and decides to peek, but his eye is sucked in at that moment and pulled out of its socket. On the other side of the bar, Coach is also attacked and ends up losing his pants, which makes Grandma laugh a lot. Realizing that this was a coordinated attack, Jane and Bossman start counting available ammunition, coming up with a rather discouraging result. Honey manages to snatch one of the bullets, but has no idea how to load it into the gun she stole. Bossman says he stored more boxes of ammunition in the basement, and besides that, there is a radio upstairs if anyone wants to venture out. As Bozo keeps questioning Jane's orders, and has even said that the group needs a more manly leader. She suggests that the two split the risky tasks. The idea is for him to try to use the radio while she searches for the bullets in the basement. This greatly shakes the brave facade of the young man, and he will only take on the mission if someone goes along. Tuffy also offers to accompany Jane downstairs, and the rest stay in the hall, trying to ignore the bangs on every door and window. Bozo goes up with Joe and Coach, but the two only accompany him halfway, locking him alone in the part with the open windows. He almost falls down when he puts his foot in the hole made by Joe's shot and manages to steady himself with great difficulty, obviously terrified. Arriving at the last room, he is met by a bat that nearly scares him to death, and then finds the radio. Bozo begins to call for help, giving the coordinates of the bar and not mentioning the monsters, but his plea is cut off when one of the creatures knocks over the radio and runs out of the room. Still shouting his last instructions in case someone is listening on the other side, he pounds on the door and begs them to open it. Joe even tries, but the key ends up breaking, and Bozo is saved just in time when Jane arrives and uses an earring to unlock the door. They manage to close the room right after Bozo gets out, not letting the creature through. However, part of the monster gets hung up on the outside until Jane manages to cut it off and it rolls down the stairs, landing under Hot Wheels' chair. The boy is very happy to see that his brother survived, and the two hug, while Coach begins another motivational speech. Suddenly, the bar suffers a simultaneous attack from all sides, with all the beasts and their babies charging against the boards on the windows. Honey suggests running to the cars, and despite the huge risk, some agree with her because staying inside won't work for much longer. Hot Wheels says they might have a chance if they can lure the monsters to one side of the bar and escape through the other. When someone asks how they could attract these things, the boy gives an idea that doesn't please everyone, but no one has a better one. Using detergent and hairspray, he constructs some explosives and ties them to Harley, using her body as bait. Jane hands Tuffy a folded paper in case she doesn't return and goes to the basement with Coach, from where the two plan to run to the nearest car and then gather the others. Meanwhile, Bossman and Bozo drag the human trap upstairs and are about to throw it out the window when Harley opens her eyes and begins to scream, asking for help. Bozo tries to save her, but Bossman stops him and stomps his foot on the ground twice, signaling to the rest of the group that everything is running as planned. One of the monsters soon appears and drags Harley out so quickly that Hot Wheels almost drops the grip. After a lot of mishaps, they manage to plug in the cord and cause an explosion, which also cuts off the power inside the bar. Coach gathers the courage to jump out of the basement window, and Jane follows right behind. But the distraction plan does not work, and she soon finds herself surrounded. Hearing her screams, Joe and Tuffy try to let her in, but Beer Guy points a gun at them, fearing the creatures will come in after Jane. Upstairs, Bozo is still upset with Bossman's attitude, who also threatens him with a gun, demanding that he lie to the others about Harley. The two begin to fight, and Bozo manages to take his revolver. Downstairs, Tuffy also disarms Beer Guy, but Jane has already given up on coming through there. She is accidentally hit when she tries to enter through the upper window as Bozo panics and shoots at her, thinking she's a monster. He is horrified when he realizes what he's done, and Bossman takes the opportunity to remind him that now one will have to keep secret from the other. When they go down, Tuffy is devastated by the news, and Bossman blames the monsters. The folded paper that Jane left with Tuffy has the address of the house where she left her daughter, Charlie. At that moment, Tuffy channels all her rage over the loss of her child into survival and takes control of the group. Bossman mocks her determination and encourages everyone to follow her along with a commotion while he waits for help lying there on the ground, since that way the monsters won't occupy themselves with him. However, he says this too soon, as his chest explodes soon after when a claw pierces the floor and hits him from behind. Everyone panics, and Hot Wheels even falls out of his wheelchair, but his brother rushes to help him. The group continues waiting for Coach to have reached the car and come to get them at any moment. But soon, they begin to hear his screams. Tuffy peeks through a crack in the door and sees that the monsters not only overpowered him, but are about to use him as a battering ram to break into the bar. Joe realizes that the door won't hold and tries to teach Beer Guy to light a Molotov cocktail, asking him to throw it at the creatures as soon as they invade. However, Beer Guy is already practically catatonic and shows no sign that he is even listening. As the monsters are already breaking parts of the door, the group is forced to change strategy, using a ladder as a ramp to roll several barrels of beer. The first ones hit the monster and manage to push it away long enough for them to send Honey hidden inside the last barrel. With the momentum, she lands quite near the cars and manages to get into Beer Guy's truck without being attacked. For a moment of terror, it seems the engine won't start, but then everyone cheers and celebrates when they see that she managed to get it going. This joy turns into hatred and despair when she makes a sharp turn and simply drives off without coming back for anyone. Another chance for salvation is lost, and the group is already at the limit of their strength when a monster knocks down part of the wall and invades the bar. The survivors engage in a fight against it, using all kinds of available weapons. Even knocked out of his chair and pinned to the floor, Hot Wheels keeps shooting, while Tuffy tries to prevent the babies from coming in too. Beer Guy tries to light the Molotov cocktail as Joe taught him, but has lost his coordination and lets everything drop to the floor just as the second monster arrives and confronts him up close. It crushes Beer Guy's head between its claws and then goes for Tuffy, who has just realized that she's out of ammunition. Enraged, she knocks the monster down and begins to hit it with a heavy object, screaming as if she has gone mad. Bozo asks Joe to pass the bottle that Beer Guy dropped, and he does so with great effort, as he is having a heart attack. This suffering is ended by a swift kick from the monster that finishes off the bartender for good. Bozo finally manages to light the lighter, but the flame quickly goes out, and besides that, Tuffy is handling the remaining creature. Despite being practically defeated, the monster takes time to die, and she loses her patience, shoving her arm down its throat until it chokes. Bozo is amazed at the fury of the girl and relieved to see that day is already breaking. Then, he pulls his brother from under the rubble and carries him to the car along with Tuffy. She says that Charlie, Jane's daughter, is in a nearby house, and they decide to go fetch her together. In the bar, we see that Grandma has been hiding all this time and only now dares to open the door very slowly, but is quickly attacked by a monster.